In September 2013, in the far west of China, near the border with Tibet, a geophysical research mission was sent to investigate seismic disturbances in a remote mountain range of Qinghai province. Officially, it was a study of tectonic activity and mining. Unofficially, local reports of disappearances, unexplained sounds, and strange atmospheric phenomena had caught the attention of the military authorities monitoring the region. This is the account, suppressed for over a decade, of one of the few survivors of that event. The mountain range where it all happened has no name on official maps. It is known by the nearby village inhabitants only as Gushang, or the Silent Mountains. There, according to the oldest traditions, there were ruins of an empire predating Chinese historical records, where priests buried secrets so they would never be discovered. Some accounts speak of stone doors locked with blood. Others mention creatures that herd souls and fed on pain. Most locals refused to climb beyond a certain point on the trail, especially after sunset. The team involved consisted of 12 members. None were military, but all had technical or scientific backgrounds: geologists, underground sensor engineers, drilling technicians, and a linguist hired to translate local inscriptions. The latter, an Argentine named Francisco Aranda, 47 years old, had previously participated in archaeological excavations in Iran and Uzbekistan. His role on this mission was to understand possible ancient reliefs or symbols in caves near the seismic points of interest. The first week passed normally, except for the unusual weather. Despite it being summer, temperatures at the camps suddenly dropped at night, forming ice crystals around the tents. Electronic equipment showed occasional failures, and the sensor technician reported abnormal magnetic readings so high that his devices malfunctioned. One engineer, Zhang Li, 29, even fainted during the installation of underground cables, reporting a high-pitched buzzing that seemed to come from inside the bones. On the 11th day, the team discovered an opening on the north face of the mountain, camouflaged by dense vegetation and rows of stones stacked in geometric patterns. Aranda was particularly intrigued by the symbols carved into the outer stones, a language resembling Proto-Sumerian shapes, but with hypnotic circular patterns. This does not belong to any recorded culture, he noted in his diary. The inscriptions are ancient but deliberate. They have a purpose, a function. The expedition members decided to explore the cave with minimal equipment: flashlights, ropes, a thermal camera, and short-range communicators. There was no sign of wildlife, no sound, no echo, only the sound of their boots touching the dry ground. Within the first 60 meters, they found artifacts, small stone statues with grotesque shapes, teeth carved with precision, but always in odd numbers. The linguist noticed they all seemed to watch the entrance, like sentinels made to observe, not protect. As they advanced, the air grew thicker, the warmth disappeared, and humidity vanished completely. The cave seemed to suck the life energy from anyone who approached. Aranda reported severe nausea, while others said they heard whispers without anyone speaking. "I heard my mother calling my name," said Chen Bo, one of the engineers, "but she died 4 years ago." Upon reaching a larger chamber, the cave opened into a circular hall with a vaulted ceiling. In the center, an altar made of black rock dripped a dense reddish liquid, as if still fresh. Behind it, engraved deep into the wall, was a humanoid figure with 3 eyes, overly long arms, and a mouth covering nearly half the face. Aranda stood frozen for nearly a minute. He didn't move, didn't blink. When he finally reacted, he said only, "This is an invocation. They left this here to keep something alive, or contained." And then ... the lights failed. When the flashlights went out, the cave was swallowed by a darkness so thick it seemed to have weight. It was not merely the absence of light, it was a denial of vision itself. Radios went silent with static hiss, and sensors started emitting irregular beeps, as if something interfered with all frequencies simultaneously. Engineer Huang Wei, 35, lit an emergency lighter. The weak flame barely illuminated his face, but revealed something at the back of the chamber, a shadow that shouldn't be there. It moved silently, as if floating. It had no defined shape, only presence. Francisco Aranda, the linguist, fell to his knees. He began murmuring disjointed phrases in various languages: Sanskrit, Latin, Old Persian. It was as if his brain was searching ancestral memories, trying to find a language the entity would recognize, or that would protect him. His eyes rolled back, and blood slowly dripped from his ears. The first death was silent. One of the excavation technicians, Leonid Pavlichenko, a 41-year-old Russian, simply vanished. A second was next to him. Moments later, only his flashlight lay on the ground in a trail of viscous liquid, as if something had been dragged away, soundlessly, without resistance. Everyone else froze. Fear had overcome the instinct to flee. No one spoke, no one moved. The second death was anything but silent. Huang, the lighter man, started screaming. His screams echoed like knives on concrete. His body twisted as if something was inside him or around him. Blood gushed from his mouth, nose, and eyes. His fingers broke on their own, like dry branches. When he fell, the others saw what looked like a shadow wrapping around his head like a living web, before disappearing back into the darkness. Aranda came back to himself, trembling. He said only 3 words. It's awake now. By this point, the team was no longer a group. They were a pile of survivors in shock. Some tried to run to the exit, but the cave seemed to have changed. The Mexican geologist, Inés Herrera, 33, tried to return along the trail they had entered, but found only a wall where there had been a passage. The internal structure had changed or been altered by the thing living there. With no options, they decided to follow another side tunnel, discreetly opening beside the altar chamber. It was narrower, forcing them to walk crouched, breathing air that already tasted of rusty metal and rot. The inscriptions on the walls continued, but now they were different, more rushed, angular, as if carved in desperation. They were made from the inside out, commented one survivor, almost trans-like. Whoever was here tried to warn, but it was too late. Upon entering a new, smaller, circular room, they saw skeletons, not old, recent, some with remnants of fabric, boots, belts, and even a military backpack with Russian symbols from the 1980s. Inside, a nearly destroyed diary. Legible excerpts read, "No one answers on the radio. We thought it was just superstition, but now it talks to all of us, even when we're apart. The captain killed himself yesterday with the shovel. Said he had to silence the voices." One survivor commented, "They tried to destroy the entrance, and yet it hunted them." Aranda began to cry silently. "This is not a spirit. This is not a demon. It's something older, much older. A fragment of a thing that came before our civilization." And then, the entity spoke to them. Not with sound, but with presence. A direct invasion of the mind. It was like a voice projected from inside the skull, whispering in every nerve, touching forgotten childhood memories, buried traumas, unspeakable sins. Each one heard something different, but all felt the same. Absolute vulnerability before. An inhuman consciousness, a shadow larger than any physical form materialized at the tunnel entrance they had just passed. A face without clear features, except for the eyes 3, fused into a cold yellow glow. It didn't move like a living being. It was as if each step happened in another reality, but had consequences here. Are you completely immersed in this story? Then now it's your turn to speak up. If this account caught you by surprise, tell me in the comments what you would do if you were in this situation. But no nonsense like leave a like. Seriously, do you think the being was an alien entity, an ancient spirit, or something without a name? Tell me down below. Oh, and if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the moment. Only the brave stay till the end. See you in the next segment, if you dare to continue. The figure standing at the tunnel entrance did not move, and maybe that was the worst. The absolute stillness, the deliberate silence, created such unbearable suspense that each remaining team member began to tremble for different reasons. Acoustic engineer Kofi Unjor, a 38-year-old Ghanaian, who had until then remained calm, started laughing nervously, repeating the words, "There is no time here, ... it folds. It folds everything." He said this before stabbing a surveying knife into his own eye, as if that would free him from something only he could see. The cave responded not with sound, but with movement. The walls pulsed, slowly, as if breathing, as if the mountain itself were alive and hungry. The air changed again. Smell of ashes, iron, sweat, and wet earth. Time, for anyone still thinking logically, seemed to slow and compress simultaneously. There was no longer certainty how long they had been there. Minutes, hours, days. They no longer knew. Francisco Aranda, though debilitated, took a step forward. He began to communicate with the entity, not with words, but with gestures, pounding his hand on his chest and pointing to the altar they had left behind. The creature moved for the first time. It flowed along the ground like dense smoke, and then it spoke, with the same mental presence as before, but now everyone heard the same words. "You broke the seal. The ancient stones, the forgotten names, the door, everything was left, so the ignorant would never touch it. But you touched it." The words did not come in a single voice. They sounded like multiple mouths speaking together, childish, adult, elderly, human, and inhuman, in layers vibrating in flesh. Aranda tried to respond. The entity continued. "The empire before man used these caves as a nursery, not for life, but for consciousness, for living thoughts. The priests sealed the last fragment here, the most rebellious, I am the thought, that survived extinction." Upon hearing this, Inés, the geologist, fell to her knees. She cried and murmured in Spanish, "No es real. Esto no es real," but it was. The ground around her began to crack, as if something underneath wanted to come out. Before anyone could react, a deformed arm, covered with bony plates, emerged from the soil and pulled her down with devastating force. She was taken below with a dry crash, and then the ground closed as if it had never opened. A muffled scream echoed for a few seconds, then absolute silence. 4 remained. By this point, no one spoke anymore. They only moved like cornered animals. They followed another tunnel that seemed to spiral downward, but always returned to the same point. The altar? As if the cave's structure had a will of its own. Aranda explained through gritted teeth that it made sense because space was distorted, that this was part of the containment mechanism, now trying to prevent the entity from escaping. But whatever was sealed had already been freed, or partially freed. Only a power play remained. Who would survive and who would serve as a vessel? German technician Heiner Koltz, 51, gave in. "There's no point running," he said, sitting on the altar's edge. "We are the sacrifices." Then he began to draw, with blood from his own slit wrist, the same symbols seen on the walls. His skin wrinkled with every stroke. His hair fell out. He aged before the other's eyes, as if seconds stole decades. When he died, he looked like a mummified corpse from centuries ago. Aranda just watched, silently. He was no longer among the living, his body, yes, but his mind had already been taken. 3 remained, and here, if you're still with me, need you to tell me how far you would go for knowledge? Comment below if you think Aranda is possessed, cursed, or